So we are still in the content portion of the writing process when we talk about the PACOW, the purpose and audience. We already talked about explicating the prompt, which is the notes that you're looking at right now. I'm going to do a quick review of everything, so don't think that you are watching a video you've already watched. So we explicate the prompt, which means we break it down to understand what explicitly or exactly is being asked of us. Okay? And then for content, we have to brainstorm for the main idea. So that basically means getting all of my ideas out of my head and answering those implicit and explicit questions. So if I'm looking at the top of that screen, so this was me breaking down the prompt up here. This is me brainstorming all of the possible ideas I have for answers for that, okay? And then we moved on and we took all of that to develop into a thesis statement. That thesis statement, again, is one sentence, right? A single sentence that answers the prompt. Usually that sentence has answers to the big six. That's not what I wanted to do. Usually has answers to the big six: who or what, does what, when, where, why, and how, and can use a list of 3 or more to let the reader know how the information will be organized. So 3, that means one of those 6 questions, either who or what, does what, when, where, why, and how, will have 3 answers. The previous video gave you this example for breaking this down. I have 2 different columns there to show you there are multiple ways to answer that. So if I look at the first column, I went through and just answered them. And then second column, I did it, but I focused on technology instead of students. And then in the bottom row, this right here, students, that's a sample thesis. All I did was take the first 5 rows in each column and put them together into one long sentence. That's it. And then I revised it. That's underneath it. It's my revised thesis. Students must learn technology. I'm going to highlight that so everybody can see it. Students must learn technology while in school with various devices to communicate with others, to learn new things, and to entertain themselves. So that's my sample thesis, right? The next step is going to be to brainstorm supporting ideas and examples for that thesis. So I have my thesis in mind. Now I need to come up with examples or details that will help me prove what I have determined my thesis to be. Okay. So if I go back to the content, that's what I'm going to write down here. This process is for me to come up with I don't want that to be underlined. Okay, so that's what brainstorming supporting details means. I want to come up with as many ideas, details, facts that will prove my thesis and get it out of my head and onto the screen or onto paper. Okay, these examples or details can be prior knowledge, something I learned about in another class, something I learned about in my personal life. This can also be prior experience. Like real life experience. I lived through this. This is what I do. Or this is what I watched happen to somebody else. This can be based on additional research or reading. So I may have read a book about this once, or I'm not sure if I know exactly what I want to say. So I'm going to do some Googling and look up some additional pieces of information. Okay? So when I'm brainstorming the specific ideas, this is me coming up with very, very particular details for my thesis statement, okay? So if I go back to my thesis statement about the sample one that I did for you guys, the learning technology, if I were to go through and look at all of the things in my thesis, this would be my sample brainstorming, okay? This is me answering or listing as many ideas as I can come up with just in bullet form that would help support this thesis statement, okay? So I'm going to do a quick read through. So like, for example, devices that I use daily. And again, those were all the questions, all these explicit questions and implicit questions up here. This is me getting more specific on those. That was supposed to be a highlight. I'm not sure why I did that. Okay, so this is me getting more specific. Devices I use daily. I use my MacBook, my iPhone, my iPad, my smart TV, specific apps I use. Then I have a whole list of all the apps that I use. Apps I use weekly. All the apps I use weekly. Apps I use occasionally. Websites. And then I went down further, and then now we're looking at the communicate. These are the specific apps I use to communicate. Apps I use to create things. Again, I'm going to go back up here to show you this. This was my thesis statement. Okay? This was one thesis statement. So when I started brainstorming for supports, I'm figuring out what technology is, what laptops, create, learn, shop. These are all things that will go directly to that thesis statement, okay? That's what brainstorming to support my thesis means. I'm going to give specific, very specific examples that will correlate directly with communication, learning new things, or entertaining. So your task is going to be supporting specific ideas or details that will go directly with your 3 dimensions in your thesis. So whatever your thesis was from the prompt that you chose out of the 4, you're going to look at that list that you created, that 3 dimensions, and I want you to list as many examples as you can. It can be in bullet form, just like mine, and then we're going to learn how to organize that with the next video.